I called Ed to see if he wanted to have a pint of beer on Sunday lunchtime. Sure, I'm already at Bob's Wheat Leaf. But I called you at work. Yeah, but I can transfer work calls to my cell phone. That's great. Maybe I should get one of those. In the pub, Ed explained, I have to work one Sunday a month, but only to service the phones. So I have one of these new cell phones and I can transfer calls from the office to it. Any customer who calls thinks I'm at work. And if I can't answer their question from memory, I just say I'll call them back on Monday. Tabby and I live in a rented apartment, but all the furniture is ours. If I get a promotion next year, we plan to buy a house, get married, and start a family. In the meantime, I work hard at my job and I get noticed. Every week or so, I have to work at one of the smaller branches of my company and stay in a hotel overnight. When I return, the sex is always raucous. When I'm away, we have a certain routine. I call Tabby at her office when I check in to let her know I got there safely. I call again around 10:30 when we're usually ready for bed. These calls are more intimate. One Tuesday it was Bristol, and we went about our usual business as I went to bed. Back at work, I turned in a report on Bristol and was called into Frank's office. The manager from Bristol, Carl, was impressed with your work, Bob. He asked if you'd like to take a permanent position there. Wow, he never said. No, he thought it best to discuss it with me first, in case I couldn't let you go. Are you interested? You bet I am. Well, the situation is this. You're going to get promoted next spring anyway, but next month you can get the same offer. I don't want to lose you, but I don't want to hold you back either. I know you come from the West Country, so I thought you'd probably want it. I want it. There's another advantage. The guy you're replacing has already left, and Carl says there's 3 months left on the lease on the apartment. If you want it, they'll hold it for you. It'll be easier to get started that way until you get yourself sorted out. I really want it, Frank. 3 weeks then. I wrote my resignation letter and spent the day quietly. I decided not to share my news with Tabby because I suspected she was having an affair with a coworker. It sounds very arcane, but I'm a logical thinker. That's what I'm paid to do. I took care of the problem, and I was sure she was lying to me. Lying has its own psychology. If you're gonna lie, you gotta lie big as bullshit. A person having an affair will intersperse their lies with as much truth as possible, but the other person's name will loom in their mind. So they will mention it. That way, if it comes up in conversation, they'll back up. Oh, X, you remember X? I've mentioned him before. I mentally flipped through our recent conversations about Tabby's work and coworkers, then picked the name she mentioned most often, Charles. Is he your boss? I asked. No, my boss is Richard. But when we're seconded to a project, we go from line managers to project managers. On Project Omega, I report to Charles. That wasn't all. Charles had only been working here for a few months. The other employees really liked Charles. Charles was divorced and lived alone. Charles was quickly promoted to director. It was never mentioned that Charles was tall, handsome, etc. Sometimes you leave clues by what you don't say. Maybe Tubby wasn't having an affair or had one, but not with a coworker. However, all odds aside, my candidate was Charles, and if they were guilty and I had a violent nature, they both had to pay. I looked around for more evidence but found nothing. I have a vengeful nature that is usually well hidden. Blood would be spilled if Tabby was playing away from home. But until the situation got out of hand, I was willing to back off and give her the benefit of the doubt. So I quizzed her. You're never going to have an affair, are you? I'll be furious if you do. Where did that come from? She asked. Will you answer it? Of course I'll answer it. No, I would never cheat on you. There's no point in asking. It's just nice to hear it out loud sometimes. Is that what you're going to have? Is that what we're talking about? I wouldn't, I said. I'd leave you if you did. We walked away from that little conversation and avoided each other for an hour. A week later, I went to Coventry. It's not often you get weeks in a row, Tabby said. They've got serious problems, babe. I might have another trip next week. I still hadn't told her about the vacancy in Bristol. That would remain a secret for now. That night from my hotel room, we moved on to a bedtime phone conversation, and I included, I hope you're going to bed alone. Not that. Of course I'm tucking in. Are you sure you don't want to eat? She asked when I returned the next evening. No, it's getting late. I just need to go to bed. I don't sleep well without you. There were 2 pillows in the bedroom, resting on their corners and leaning against the headboard of the bed. What's this? I asked. It's modern. It looks sophisticated. I climbed into my pajamas while Tabby brushed her teeth. When I finished brushing mine, she screamed. I rushed back into the bedroom and she was standing on a chair, squealing. She looked like Tom's big black mom who had just seen Jerry. Spider. The duvet cover was flung to her side and a furry tarantula the size of a saucer was in front of her. I picked it up, brought it up to my face and squeezed it. Bad spider. Scare poor Tabitha like that. I threw it at the bedroom door, where it bounced on the floor. He lay on his back, twitched once, and fell silent. It's all taken care of, baby. The hero is back. You bastard, she jumped off the chair. You know I hate spiders. Yeah, well, that was the point of the joke. It wasn't funny. Get rid of it. I picked it up. In the end, he turned out not to be hairy, but rubbery. Where am I supposed to put him? Throw him in the spare bedroom, and while you're there, go to bed. You're not sleeping with me tonight. I went downstairs and put it in the kitchen trash can, wrapping it in newspaper beforehand. I went back to the bedroom. There's no way I'm sleeping in the other room. I don't sleep well on hotel beds. Well, you're definitely not getting sex. She curled into her pillow, clutching one of her fancy pillows to her chest. All night she snuggled up to me. In the morning we made love passionately. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, she said, I'm sorry about last night, you really scared me. I'm sorry too. While I was gone, I looked in the joke store. It was supposed to be kind of funny. At breakfast I wasn't really surprised by her news. We're invited to a barbecue on Saturday. Whose? Could it be Charles's barbecue? Charles, she confirmed. He invited everyone from the project, as well as a few neighbors. He doesn't know many people here, so this will be a good chance for all of us to get together. Well then let's go and make him welcome. Great. He asked if we could each bring our own drinks. We gathered late in the afternoon. There were a dozen people from the office here, most of whom I knew, and half a dozen neighbors I didn't know. I don't know if everyone got as personalized service as we did, but he willingly showed Tabby and me around the house. What interested me most was his bedroom. There were 3 pillows artfully arranged between the pillows, very exquisite. We only have 2. Back downstairs, she joined her co-workers. Charles and I were in his office, which he called the library. A bag of golf clubs in one corner looked out of place. You have a lot of Stephen King's, I said, picking up the stand. I've never seen this extended version. I put on my reading glasses when he said, a lot of these are first editions. I started to put the book back down. No, it's okay, look at it. All the valuable ones are on the top shelf. Some are still in shrink wrap. Throughout the barbecue I kept my eyes on Tabby, but she didn't give anything away. She brought 2 chilled bottles of Pinot Grigio in the cooler. As far as I knew, she'd never drunk it before. In the same box, I brought 12 cans of Boddingtons. I didn't expect to drink them all, and was willing to share. One of the neighbors came over with a liter bottle of the Macallan. I should get to know him better. I stood next to Charles and chatted. Pretty, isn't she? Said I. Who? Tabby. Oh, of course. Yeah, she's cute. Cute. Thought I. Gee, you're afraid to admit to your husband that she's cute. I knew it was you. He was dressed casually in a polo shirt and jeans and incredibly hairy. I don't have much armpit hair and I don't have any on my chest, but he had them poking through his shirt, not like a big spider. I smiled. Later, when Charles was busy at the barbecue, I slipped into his kitchen. A tall cabinet revealed a dozen bottles of Pinot Grigio. Suddenly he shrieked. It turned out he had left a barbecue fork with a handle hanging over the coals and then picked it up. One of the female neighbors led him into the kitchen. Her husband, the one from Macallan's, was dozing in a chair. I walked over and joined him. Tabby got up and took over the chef's duties. She ignored the hot fork and grabbed a spatula, flipping burgers like a pro. She even flipped sausages with it. Holding the bun in one hand and the spatula in the other, she poked the burger and deftly placed it on the plate next to the lettuce. Come and get it, guys. Add your own bits to taste, she instructed. There's mustard, relish, whatever you want. A small line formed. I nudged my new friend. You look comfortable. Can I get you a burger? Not yet, thanks. I'll have another whiskey. He reached for the bottle, but I grabbed it first. Here you go. Can I get you some ice? I never put anything in a Macallan. You're quite right. Will you have a drink with me? Thank you. I thought you'd never ask. The wounded soldier returned. His new nurse was bandaging his arm. That's a pretty nasty burn, she purred. He looked a little embarrassed, and she looked like she wanted to give him a better kiss. She walked over and joined us. Get up, you lazy pig, and get me a burger. Lots of lettuce. Mister. Macallan sighed and winked at me. I watched Charles and Tabby surreptitiously until we left for home. There wasn't a single touch or glance. He flirted with other women more than he flirted with her. An outsider would say there was no evidence of an affair, but I'd seen enough to be convinced. Time to pretend I had another trip to take. Frank is sending me to York on Wednesday. 3 weeks in a row. Sorry, it's important. No problem. She was right. It wasn't a problem. Not yet anyway. In fact, I'd just taken a day's vacation. Tuesday night, I was packing. Something was missing. Have you seen my reading glasses, babe? No, damn. I just remembered the last time Charles had them at home. I wore them when I was looking through his books. Maybe I should call him, she suggested. No, that's okay. I need to buy more toothpaste anyway. I'll go and get them. Tabby looked worried. Bob, I wasn't expecting you. No, I bet Tabby called you. I'm sorry to intrude, Charles, but I think I left my reading glasses in your library. Come on in. Would you like a beer? Thanks. We found my glasses next to the stand book where I'd left them. We had a beer and I asked if I could use his restroom. That's okay. I remember where it is from Saturday. As I relieved myself, I remembered that he'd said he almost never uses the downstairs bathroom. I pried open the top of the frosted glass window, just a tiny slit. It wasn't big enough for a person to fit through it, even if it was wide open. I visually measured the distance from it to the main window handle. I blushed and we said goodbye. On the way home, I remembered to buy toothpaste. Tabby left for work with the usual love you and take care. I added, be a good girl, but that went over her head. Instead of driving to work, I drove to a neighboring town and went shopping. I found everything I needed at a thrift store, wandered there until lunchtime and returned to our town where I bought a couple of new shirts and ties. I ate at KFC, not far from Charles's house. When I was done, I went into the restroom and came out of there in my second-hand clothes. I walked out into the street behind Charles's house and headed down the path to his house. I was wearing unremarkable running clothes, a cap, and a pair of cheap sneakers. I was still carrying my overnight bag. I climbed over the 6-foot fence and down into the garden out of sight. At the bottom of the house, the toilet window was still slightly ajar. That was a good thing. I had no alternative plan. I pulled my secret weapon out of my bag. It was crude, just an unfolded clothes hanger. Now, wearing gloves, I opened the small window and slipped the wire inside. It caught on the handle of the big window and opened it. I climbed inside and closed both windows tightly. My first destination was the library, where I picked out one of Charles' golf clubs. I've never played, so I have no idea what it is, but it was heavy and had a lot of metal on the working end. Then I looked around his bedroom. From the looks of it, Tubby was expected to show up soon. 2 of his fancy pillows were on the floor at the foot of the bed. The distance between them was just right for someone's knees. A third lay on the edge of the bed. Could it be something for biting? I went back downstairs to the library. They'd never seen these clothes before, only a balaclava put on. I looked in the mirror, unrecognizable. Putting a hat on top of the balaclava, I reshaped my head. Soon, Charles' car pulled up. They'd left work early, wanting to get some business done while the idiot guy wasn't home. I clutched the golf club in my hands, hoping I wouldn't have to use it just yet. I could hear them in the kitchen, opening a bottle. I love Pinot Grigio, enthused Tabby. Me too, but most of all, I love everything under your panties, and I want it all right now. Don't take too long on your first try. Bob might call soon to say he's here. I waited until they closed the bedroom door and tiptoed upstairs. I thought I heard them undressing. That was confirmed when I heard him say, "You can keep the stockings." I didn't even know she had a pair. I hoped I could get the timing right. When I opened the door a little, I saw exactly what I expected. I can't say it was anything special. He should have spotted me at any moment. I made it halfway to him before he turned around. What? I didn't answer. I wasn't in the mood to ask hard questions. He half raised himself. His laws were pointed straight at me. For a split second, I found the sight quite offensive. It's funny what goes through one's mind in extreme moments. And in his head was a club. I swung it, and it hit him right between his eye and his ear. He staggered backward and collapsed to the floor, landing so that he was leaning against the dresser with his legs spread wide. Blood was oozing out of him, but that was okay. Nothing got on me. Tabby still didn't know what was going on. I swung the baton again, this time at Charles' balls. There was a distinct pop. He didn't say anything, probably passed out. I dropped the baton. When Tabby started to turn toward me, I wrapped my arms around her waist and tossed her aside. I hadn't meant to hurt her. In fact, I'm not sure I did, but fate intervened. She collapsed to the floor, landing next to him. They looked strange sitting side by side. Upon closer inspection, it appeared that she had hit her head on the wooden handle of a crate. Nothing serious. It only stunned her. Her eyelids fluttered and she groaned. She looked up at me. Her gaze was glassy and dull. I squatted down and held out the golf club to her. She instinctively took it and knelt down, smearing some of Charles' blood on her stockings. She closed her eyes again. I don't think she saw me properly. I stood looking at them. They were lying side by side, legs spread wide. There was no blood in Charles' groin. He just looked swollen and purple. This worked out better and faster than I had hoped. With the lovers out of commission, I found over 200 pounds in Charles' wallet and took it. Then pulled out Tubby's cell phone and examined it. I had never picked it up before, but I realized it was contacts. Charles was the only one. I went downstairs and took off my balaclava and gloves. Quickly examining myself in the mirror, I made sure there was no blood. I went back to the downstairs restroom. If the next part didn't work, I'd have to leave through the front door. I opened the main window and climbed out. I lowered the handle just above where it was supposed to go down, and then I slammed the window shut. The knob fell back into place, closing it. That always worked when I was a kid. I took the SIM card and battery out of my phone and threw it and my balaclava and gloves into the canal. At KFC, I changed into my regular clothes, ordered a takeaway coffee, and drove home. The moving company had sent some packing boxes. I waited until 5:30 before calling Tabby's work. No, she left early. I called her mom, then her brother, but they hadn't seen her. I called her office again and reached Charles, who was running late in the department. No, there was no tardiness. He left early. At 7, I called the local hospital. Yes, they were just about to call me. Tabitha Poulter had been admitted with a head wound. I rushed to the hospital where the police were waiting for me. They wanted to talk to me, but they let me visit her first. There was no point, though, since she was sedated. The police officers took me to a quiet corner. "I'm Sergeant Carter, and this is Constable Barton," the man said, indicating the woman with a nod. "We need to know where you were today, Mr. Poulter. And I need to know what happened to my wife. The medics have given me only vague details." "I'm sorry," Constable Burton said. "We're not at liberty to divulge anything at this stage. Look, my wife and I are moving this weekend. I took the day off today and started packing. I went into Collier's this afternoon and bought shirts for my new job in Bristol. Came back here, ate at KFC, and went home." "Have you ever been to Charles Diamond's house?" "Yes, twice." "Can you tell us when and why?" "No." They looked at each other. "Why?" "Because I don't know why you're asking." "I'm stressed out. My wife is unconscious and her family is on their way. I think there's an expression for it. A lot to do. And here you are rambling on about some guy I barely know. What happened to her?" "You must understand." "No, I don't understand. Here's the thing. You tell me everything you know and I'll tell you everything I know. And if it means I have to be put in a cell for the night, do it. My day couldn't be worse." They looked at each other, and he nodded. The ambulance service received a 999 call this evening. Medical assistance was requested at Charles Diamond's residence. We arrived and had to break down the front door to gain access. He was found in his bedroom. The medics wouldn't let us in at first, so I don't have details of his injuries, although I understand he was unconscious. Tabitha Poulter was in the same bedroom. She was standing by the bedside table and still holding the phone. "What were they wearing?" Come on, you know exactly what it looks like." "What were they wearing?" He looked at DS and she answered, "They were both naked, Mr. Poulter." I looked quite serious. "Did they have anything to say for themselves?" "Mr. Diamond remained unconscious the whole time. The nurses reported that your wife spoke in passing about seeing a black man in the room, but there were no signs of forced entry." "Thank you. I realize you're not trained to give me an opinion on their injuries. Tell me what you think, and I'll tell you everything." "Your wife has head injuries. All I know about Mr. Diamond's condition is that it's worse than your wife's. The motive could very well have been robbery." I waited a moment to digest this new information. My wife works at Wade's with Diamond. She and I were at a barbecue at his house last Saturday. I noticed the subtle flirting. I realized later that I had left my reading glasses there and went back to get them last night. Diamond and I had a beer, and I was there for about 30 minutes. Were those the only instances? Yes, they were taking notes. I thought it was smart not to call him by name. After all, I was the offended party. Obviously, it sounds like she was having an affair with him. I continued. I had no idea except that I saw harmless flirting. My wife knew I wasn't working today and said she'd be home a little late. She was working on some project with Diamond. Now I know what it was. We walked around the houses a few more times and stopped. They were standing. I must ask you not to leave the neighborhood until we complete our investigation. You undoubtedly have colleagues in Bristol. I'm moving there this weekend. I start my new job on Monday. I can give you a new address. That will be fine. Please contact our branch on Market Road before you leave. If we're not in the neighborhood, a message will suffice. There wasn't much to do at work, just wrapping up my chores and putting away my personal belongings. By Friday, I had packed up everything at home, except the washing machine and towel. My boss gave me the day off. In Bristol, Carl organized a junior with a key to wait for the movers at my new address. I knew I would have to drink on my last day on my lunch break, so I used Carl's money to rent a cheap hotel nearby. While I took a cab to work, the movers loaded my stuff, including the bed, and left. The house was cold. Empty houses usually are. Tabby's parents arrived to pick up all her clothes and personal belongings. Is this really necessary? Her mom asked. Can't you two agree? I ignored her and looked at Tabby's dad. If your wife sneaked off to another man to have sex with him, would you try to work things out, Dave? Well, really, there's no room for vulgarity here, her mom said. That's exactly what I'm going to tell Tabby. Just get her out of here and don't come into the hospital until I get there. The phone rang. Tabby was coming around. When I arrived, the same two officers were there. Would you like an update before your visit, Mr. Poulter? That's a good idea. I'm in no great hurry to get to her. Mrs. Poulter's fingerprints were found on the golf club that Mr. Diamond was hit with. He's still unconscious, by the way. She's still confused about her thoughts, but she insists she doesn't remember touching the club. And she still believes there was someone else in the room, despite our evidence to the contrary. Our first explanation was that he attacked her. She hit him in defense, and then passed out. But that doesn't fit. Nothing fits at all. Frankly, a third person would explain the scene we found. But that's only possible if someone was already in Mr. Diamond's house when they got there, and that would make me a good candidate if I could get in. But I didn't know they were having an affair until you told me. Besides, I don't have much of an alibi. Constable Burton was about to say something but stopped herself. I think I know what it was. Most innocent people don't have a good alibi. Look, I'm moving to Bristol today. Can you confirm that everything's all right? I don't want to interfere with your investigation, but the new job is very important. Yes, move in, we have your new address, but we may want to talk to you again. Eventually, I went in to see Tabby. She was pretty excited. So what have you been up to? She hung her head. How much do you know? Oh no, we're not playing that game. It gives you too much leeway to lie. I lied? I would never cheat on you is exactly the case. I know you've done it. That counts as lying in my book. Assume I know everything and tell me the truth, all of it. She sighed in defeat. I had an affair with Charles. Do you know how he feels? They won't tell me. Later, why did you have an affair? I don't know, I was fascinated by him. And what happened before you called the ambulance? I don't know exactly. We were just about to have sex and all of a sudden I heard him fall. Or maybe he pushed himself off of me. I fell or I was thrown next to him. Why are you so unsure? I hit my head on the dresser handle. When I came to, I crawled to the bedside phone and called for help, and then I passed out again. But I'm sure there was a black man in the room. He hit Charles and then me. Even though the police told me there was no one. Do you know anything more? Yes, I know a great deal. Please tell me. I'm so confused. First you're going to tell me something, and either you tell me the truth or I'll leave. I'll leave. Did you buy a cell phone? Yes and no. Charles bought it for me. To communicate during your affair? Yes. Okay, I'll tell you what I know, but you haven't come out of your sleep yet, so pay attention. Okay, I knew you were having an affair because I called Ed and he was transferring calls from his office to his cell phone. I noticed it when he started calling. There was a pause, and then the tone changed. When I called you from my trip to Bristol, I heard that sound again. So I suspected you had a cell phone and did the same thing. The only reason I could think of why you would switch from your home phone would be if you weren't home like you said. Then I noticed the cushions around our pillows. And oh wonder, Diamond has the same thing on his bed. Conclusion? That's where you got the idea from. How am I doing? She nodded sadly. When he burned his hand and that woman took him inside, you took over as chef. We don't have a barbecue, but you took to it like a duck to water. You flipped burgers like a pro, and when you first took over, you reached for the spatula without looking. You've barbecued in his garden before, haven't you? Tears came to her eyes. And for that barbecue you got Pinot Grigio. It was the first time we bought it. But it wasn't the first time you drank it, was it? No. Diamond has a closet full of that wine. I checked. You're very smart. I'm smarter than you, absolutely. But the best part was the mock tarantula on your side of the bed. And what does that prove? Everything. You thought I put it in the bed while you were brushing your teeth. But in fact, I put it there the previous morning before I left for Coventry. What? I called you, heard the ringtone change, and said, I hope you're alone in bed. And you laughed. But that was impossible. There was a spider in there. So you must be in someone else's bed, like Diamond's, for instance. She just sat there, tears streaming down her cheeks. Finally, as soon as I left for York, you were there again. Shortly after you arrived, you were on your hands and knees having doggy-style sex, just like a bitch should. Too bad he hurt himself just before he fucked you. Wait a minute, she tried to sit up straight. You can't know those details. You were in his bedroom, weren't you? You were the man in black. I'm going to tell the police. Go ahead and tell them. The police report says that the arrangement of the fancy pillows indicates that you were on your knees, hence the doggy style. Your treatment at the hospital indicated that sexual activity, that is foreplay, had already begun. They also confirmed that he slept with you, at least not that day. She lowered her eyes. There's no evidence that anyone else was in the house. I agree it's hard for the police to put together a scenario that makes sense. But you were about to get fucked, and you ended up falling on the bedroom furniture, and the lover boy suffered a head and ball injury, apparently with his own golf club. The assault. Who threw the punch first, did you? It certainly couldn't have been me. I would have killed you both. She looked at me with bewilderment and suspicion. Diamond is still in critical condition, and the weapon has your fingerprints on it. So go ahead and tell the cops you think it was me. They already think you're crazy. Tabby started crying even louder. Then the last part of what I know. Our house is empty. Your stuff is at your mom's. Next time you see her, don't be vulgar. She doesn't like that. Tabby looked even more confused. I gave the key back to the landlord, so don't go back there. If you do, trespassing will be added to your other sins, and I have a new job and a new address. You don't need to know where what. You heard. While you were offering yourself to the handsome Mr. Diamond, life was going on. But mind you, I called your office yesterday. They'd only just found out you were both injured. I told them what you'd been up to, and I think they canceled the trip to get flowers. I wonder if you'll still have a job when you get out of here. And I'll be surprised if Diamond even gets out of there, to be honest. He's almost a vegetable by now. Suits him. You bastard. Rich for saying that. If you're having trouble finding a job after you're discharged, you can always buy some more stockings and hang around the station after 9 o'clock. A neck corset might scare off a few customers. I walked out feeling smug. The trip to Bristol had been enjoyable. Eventually, Tabby would find out where I was, but hopefully she wouldn't try to contact me. I hoped she wouldn't try to contact Frank. How did I get back from York so quickly? We don't even have a branch there.